Hello, hello, hello. How's it going? The genuine question, how has your day been? Wherever you're at in the world. I know there are quite a few of you in mixed time zones. I'm calling mixed time zones dynamic time zones now. Do me a favor and see if you can find your chat box and type a quick response to me, just so that I can check that you are in fact. Hey Chris, how's it going? Just so I can check you're alive. Those of you who have met Jill or I before in any context, hey AG Consult, which member of the AG Consult team are here? Hey Brian, hey Joe, how are you? Hey Janet, hey Pierre, okay, lots of people here. As I was saying before you rudely interrupted me, we tend to be very discursive at the Colouring In department. It's very much part of our approach. So I do ask, of course, that you use the group chat. It will be managed and manned by me to the best of my ability whilst Jill is speaking, but there will be an opportunity at the end also for questions. So do feel free to type your innermost Google Analytics thoughts into that group chat box, or indeed anything else that you might find relevant, and I'll pick up on it and pass it back to Jill, or pick it up myself, depending on whether it's relevant to do so at that point in time. Jill, give me the housekeeping, please. Let's see if we can time it. Oh. Give me the house. No, we can't time it. Apparently we can't time it. Housekeeping wise, clearly you have found the group chat, because we're having a chat already. Fabulous. Discussion in action. I've got you all mute. As much as I love speaking to you, many of you, I will keep you on mute throughout the call. And if you do want to have a chat at the end, of course I will unmute you so we can listen to your dulcet tones. And as I said, there'll be 10 or 15 minutes towards the end of the session for Q&A. You can, of course, use the chat box if you're more comfortable with doing so. Not everyone loves the sound of their own voice. Me. And also Jill. We're going to record the session too, so hello recording watchers. It will live on our YouTube channel, and of course we'll follow up via email, just in case you wanted to watch Jill do it all again, which I'm sure you will. Share it with your friends, tell your family, talk about it over a festive dinner that is already thinking about. Hey Justin, hopefully you'll have a great time with Jill. Hopefully you'll get the proverbial Google Analytics brain juices flowing in a non-gory sense. But without further ado, I hand you over to the inimitable Jill Quick.
Right, I'm going to unmute myself and start again because I can't seem to get this to work. Let's see, there should be cooking. I can see the face of somebody lovely in the side. Can you nod if you can hear me?
All good, Jill, all good.
Yay, marvellous. Technology normally hates me. So today we are going to be focusing on Google Analytics, and in particular, how you can get more out of this platform. And hopefully that's why you're here. You've been using it and you want to see if there are things that you're maybe missing, or if there are ways that you could be using Google Analytics to improve your content. Now, when we are talking about content here, I am referring to any website pages that you're building, your copywriting, PDFs that you have on your website that people can download, videos. Oh God, videos take so much time, not necessarily to record, but the editing and the post-production. So they are quite resource heavy. So you want to understand if everything that you're throwing up on the website, if it's actually helping in moving the line in terms of those meaningful customer interactions. So we're going to be thinking about how you can use the tool with the analogy of a mixtape of reporting happiness. We're throwing in some song themes in here. I really like to talk about, in particular, things like content grouping. So we're going to go into that and give you some demos, and I'm going to show you some top tips on how to get more out of it in terms of Data Studio. So let's start with my first song. I'm thinking here, I'm not going to sing, although I might actually sing. Apologies if I do sing, because I've got a pretty crap voice. Coming Together, thinking about the beautiful song from the Beatles. Here I want to start the webinar focusing on the 100-foot view. As we've said about content marketing being in many forms, if you are putting time and resources into your content marketing, you have to think strategically about your tracking ecosystem. before you get started. There's absolutely no point in spending time and money on a marketing budget, driving traffic to the website, if you haven't thought about how you're going to measure it from the offset. So the first thing that I like to do when thinking about any sort of measurement, it comes down to the role that that content will play for you. And by that, we need to be thinking about assisted conversions and the role that that content plays. So we have to go back to the customer journey. Even with analytics, you have to think about the customer journey, because those numbers are going to give you a different picture depending on the context of where the content fits within the role. So we're talking here about basically the pain and problem aware being the very first step of the customer journey. So this is all the washing machine stuff that's in your head. So I have, true story, I have a leaky roof at the moment, thanks to all the storm weather we've been having in the United Kingdom at the moment. So I am typing things into Google like, why is my roof making a funny noise? How do I stop leaks? How do they happen? So it's all the who, what, where, why, when kind of questions that I'm going through, because I have an issue or a problem that I want to solve. When we move into the solution aware, I am then thinking about, do I need to go and get some tarpaulin, or do I need to get some sort of weird sheet that you need to hammer in? You can tell I don't do DIY, but you get the picture. There will be a number of solutions that fit within your pain and problem aware stages, and out of all of those solutions that I could have for my problem, I will be aware of products. So this is where on my journey down Google or talking to my friends, I might find that the answer to my problem of why I have a leaky roof is that I need some better nails for the thing that stops it leaking, the sheets or whatever. Now, this is where the product could be, do I buy them from B&Q? Do I go to a handyman to get them to do it for me? Do I watch a YouTube video to do it myself? Whatever. And then you'll then you'll find there are particular brand names, and I don't know any brand names for sealants on roofs, so we're going to move on with that in a second. But when I become most aware, I know exactly what I'm looking for. Now, so those of you that know me, I'm not a DIY person, so my end result of this journey was to find a local handyman and just get him to go up on the roof and fix it. But with any business, whether you are B2B, B2C, charities, content, websites, whatever, you have customers that are working through different stages of the journey. And what that looks like when we think about the content that we're creating, in particular for our websites and our search engine optimization, the keyword modifiers, those changes in our keyword research will shift depending on the stage of awareness. So when we're at the pain or problem aware, we're thinking about the non-brand keywords. It's all those featured snippets, it's the blog articles, it's the how-tos. Like, I'm not ready for the really complicated sales message. I need content that is non-brand focused, because I don't know what I don't know yet. I'm still on that thought process, that decision-making process. As I move towards the solution and product aware, that's where you are being exposed to particular solutions and brands. So those keyword modifiers are going to shift ever so slightly, and you're going to get a mix of brand and non-brand keywords. And then when we get right to the very end of the journey, when somebody is most aware of what they're doing, you pretty much have the brand dominates all approach for this. And this is where context is really key, because you can look at your analytics and you can start picking out, well, what's working and what isn't working in getting the sale or getting somebody to complete the conversion. Because of the attribution model in analytics, and to remind you of that, it is the last non-direct channel gets 100% of the credit. I'm going to mention this more times throughout the webinar, because it's a really important point to make. If the last non-direct channel gets 100% of the credit, then when you log into your acquisition reports, paid media or your PPC brand terms get all of the glory, and all of that blog content at the beginning of the journey that your team's been working on, or the videos or whatever, they look like they're not doing a very good job for you. So you've got to understand the role of that content and the different stages of awareness, because it will impact the way that you report and the context of how well that content's working for you. Now, if we think about our brand and non-brand keyword thinking, I would also like to pose the argument, the thought process that different types of content work better at different stages of the journey. So what I mean by that is, at the beginning of my customer journey, when I'm thinking about my pain and problem aware, I am looking for quizzes and blogs and infographics, because I'm not ready to read a full detailed case study. I'm not ready to watch a 45-minute program on a particular issue, because I'm at the very top of the funnel. I'm at the beginning of the process of getting more information. As I start to show more interest in a brand, I will start to invest more time. And that can also include the formats of content that I'm going to be willing to consume. So that's when I will start downloading your ebook, and I will be watching your video, signing up for your webinars, because you know a little bit more about the solutions and the products that can help you with the problems that you have at the beginning of your journey to find any of your answers. And then when I'm most aware, when I'm nearly ready to give you my cash or give you my email address to complete a form, I'm going to be consuming more detailed, more nitty-gritty content, because I've already committed myself to that. I've already given you my time and energy as we move through that process. So if we're thinking about the different stages of awareness, if we're thinking about how your keywords are going to change as you work through that customer journey, and that different types of content work better at different stages of the journey, we then need to go through a kind of audit process to understand what content do we have on our website, and have we created enough content and assets that satisfy the different stages of awareness. And if you stay right through to the end of the webinar, I have a beautiful use case of how we split the website content into different stages of awareness to highlight where we were missing quite a big opportunity in driving more people into our marketing flywheel. So thinking about the content that we have and the stages of awareness, I want you to think about where that content lives. So is this on your actual website? So you have all of your webinars and ebooks and videos. Is it on a social media site like YouTube or Twitter or Instagram or Insta Stories or whatever? Or is it a third-party application? Now, this is really important to understand, because you can drop the ball accidentally when you're building out your content and you're spending lots of money on your content, and then you don't track it properly, which means you can't tell your boss or whoever signed off the check if it's worked for you or not. So you need to start thinking about things like, well, if it's on a third-party site, so if you have content, say on YouTube or something like that, or an email provider, do I need to use UTM codes to make sure that when the traffic comes into my website ecosystem, I know where it's come from? Do I need to use event tracking? So things like people downloading a PDF or watching a video, that does not come pre-baked into Google Analytics. You have to set up event tracking to make that happen. Now, this could potentially be another webinar, so do pop a note in the chat box if you'd want us to do a webinar focused on event tracking. But if you don't have it set up, then you can't turn around to your boss to say, people that watch the video, does it make them buy more, or does it make them spend more money with you? You won't have any of that information if you don't have event tracking. And for some of you, you might want to focus on the more advanced parts of Google Analytics in the forms of custom dimensions and metrics. Now, this is where you can include your own custom dimensions and metrics into Google Analytics. So this would be things like the author, who wrote the content that's on your website? What's the category of the content? So was this a particular format of content? That kind of thing. You can do all of this if you've mapped it out. Now, for those of you that are familiar with me, I love a process. I love a template. So I do things like this. Like I'll sit down with our clients, I'll sit down with our students when we're looking at doing an audit of sorts, and I will list from the left-hand side, top to bottom. I'll go, right, what are the different types of content that work well at different stages of awareness that we as a company are producing? And then I go through a little checkbox activity just to sense check, where does that content live? If it's a viral video, is it on a social platform like YouTube, or is it on my actual website? The infographics, are they on my website, or have I sent them to a third-party tool that we're using? And then I need to think about, in columns F and G here, what sort of tracking do I need to look at? Do I need UTM codes if it's external? Do I need event tracking? And then how am I going to dig in? And then what sort of goals and metrics am I looking at? And this is really useful. As I say, there's plenty of times where we've done audits or training and somebody has spent an awful lot of time and money on content and nobody tracked it. So we were just sat there going, I have no idea how many people downloaded your PDF or how many people watched your video, or if they were using a third-party tool. So we don't host these webinars on our own website, we use a third party. We have to think about that ecosystem and how we're going to track things. So when we look at our reports to see, does this work or not? Does it work or not? But if it's not tagged, then you can't do any of that. So you want to be thinking from the bringing it all together, come together. You see what I did there very badly. Are you missing anything? Like your entire ecosystem and how you're building your assets, have things been tagged and bagged correctly? Now, one of the first things that I like to look at as a quick win is things like site search. So this is really common on websites where there's a little search bar and I can just type things in and find the information that I'm looking for instead of going through and working out the navigation. Now, if you have got a function on your website to search for particular content, then there's a report in Google Analytics called search terms. You find this in your behavior report, go into site search and then go into search terms. Now this will give you everything that people have been typing into your search bar, which is really, really useful information because it will tell you if you've potentially got a usability problem. If somebody's searching for a particular term or phrase that should be quite obvious where that content lives on your website, then it's going to give you an indication that you've got a bit of a problem with your usability. It can give you an idea of content to write. If you can see people are typing something and you don't have that content on your website, you've just been given some free information from your customers saying, we're looking for this content, please write it. I also use this to find the misspellings of keywords that I will use in my paid media strategy. So it's really, really useful. However, you have to tell Google a few things to make sure that you don't trip up on yourself. Now, one thing that can happen if you have a query parameter, so when somebody's typing in, let's say I'm on the Google merchandise store and I type in Nexus phone, the URL will pull in the keyword on my session, which means it gets recorded as a unique URL for my session, which means you can accidentally fragment your data in your behavior report. So this is an example here where somebody had site search set up, and when we went into behavior all pages report, in here, I just did a little search in the top of the report, right hand side, if you beady eyes can look, and just put in the question mark and Q because that's the query parameter that was found in the site search string. Now for this particular client, they thought they had about 8,500 page views for that particular month. As you can see on the bottom right hand side, when I just searched for the query parameter, 2,794 of those pages were actually people using the site search. So their numbers were fragmented, and they had artificially inflated how many people had actually been looking at that content. Those page view numbers were off. Now, a way to get around this is to tell our delightful computer program not to pull in these query parameters in our report. You want to condense the URLs down so you don't have all of these individual URLs making a mess of your data. Now, to start off with, you want to go into your view settings. So you go into your little cog. So you click on the admin cog, you scooch over to your view settings, and you want to make sure that certain things are ticked and are working, but you want to make sure that the query parameter has been turned on, and you need to let Google know what that query parameter is. So it's either S or Q, and if you don't know, then go speak to your dev team. But you just pop it in and say, dear Google, if anybody has a query on my website, I'd like to have that data in my behavior reports. Can you please pull that in? Here's the query parameter, S, Q, whatever. And then you want to tick the box to say strip query parameters out of the URL. Because if you're getting the data in your site search terms report, you don't want it in your all pages report, fragmenting your data and making a mess and making it look like you've got lots and lots of page views when actually you haven't. They're just people using your site search. Okay. So we've covered the basis of, let's make sure we are looking at our data from a strategic point of view, that different types of content are going to have a different role. This is an important theme. We're going to come back at this as we go through the other tracks that we have on here. So if we're tagging everything correctly, we've done a bit of an audit, we've done a bit of a sense check to see if we're tracking things correctly. We now need to have a bit of a fight on our hands now as marketeers. And some of you may not be marketers, you may be sales, you may be product, you may be user experience. Either way, I feel a little bit attacked most of the time that our marketing budget is always the first one to have a little cut, because we are the creative team, and where do we bring value to the bottom line? It's our job to show that we are the growth department. We are the departments that bring in the awareness, the retention, the activation. We're the department that comes up with those ideas that bring the sales in with the rest of the company. But if you're not tracking things and you don't have any goals set up, then how are you meant to do this? So I'm talking here about conversions. I'm talking about goals in Google Analytics. And I have done many GA audits, and they probably are missing goal data maybe 60-70% of the time, which is a crying shame, because you can have loads of goals in Google Analytics. So why don't we have them? I say we've got lots of resources. I'm sure Aidan will be popping some of these in to the chat for you to have a look at. The one thing that I want to really focus on, though, is the concept of micro and macro conversions. So macro, the big hitting, if these don't happen, we're all out of a job and I'm going to be crying kind of goals. And then you've got the micro conversions, which are the small, meaningful interactions that people are having with your website that show that they are slowly moving towards the thing that you want them to do. And there's an awful lot of value in that information. If you have a goal on your website, like I bought the product, or I downloaded the content and I gave you my email address, let's say you have a conversion rate of 2%. So 100 people come to your website, 2 people do what you want them to do. Are you going to throw away the 98% of the data that didn't do what you wanted them to do? Like, no, hopefully is the answer. You want to understand what are those conversion rates throughout that marketing flywheel, not just what do you want them to do and scoring the goal. What are those smaller conversions that mark a kind of an interest from your customer? So an example here for our content goals, if somebody read a case study I'd be pretty happy about that. If I'm spending a lot of time and money in creating case studies and interviewing my customers and building out the assets, I would probably want to have that as a goal in Google Analytics to fire and say somebody read the case study. So that could be things like scroll tracking, which again is event tracking that doesn't come pre-baked in. Did somebody scroll right to the bottom of the page, read the case study or download the case study? You're not going to know if you don't create that goal. You got loads of content in the form of videos. Did anybody watch the video? Or is there a specific video that you want to understand the conversion rate for? Did somebody register for a webinar? Like you lovely souls, we've had people in our email system and we get a little alert to say this many people signed up for your webinar. We then have another conversion, which is did people show up for the webinar? So we can complete that picture. Podcasts, I don't think they ever went out of fashion, but there's definitely more choice now. Are people listening to that content? Are they downloading your PDFs that you have? Did they read the blog? Like, did they share the content? That's another beautiful goal that you can have in Google Analytics. Did your readers go onto your website, read your content, and then go, do you know what? I am going to share this with all of my friends on my social media platform. That's a big thing. Like I would want to know if somebody had done that, and then I'd want to drill in to see which format. Was it email? Was it Facebook? Was it Twitter? Because all of this information that you can get about your users, you can use in your hypotheses to then test things and just make more money, which is always a good thing. Now, one of the things that I really like to do, and hopefully you can see where the methodology of the first song comes into play here. If you have different sources of traffic, which let's be honest, most of us do. And if you have more than one conversion, more than one goal, the micro and the macro goals, you can do things like this. Now, this is a basic heat map using Google Data Studio, where I pulled in the conversion rates for the different goals that we had, and we just put 5 in for this. We were reporting to the board and they didn't want the whole 20. They were like, just give us the top 5 that we're really interested in. And we changed the dimensions on the left hand side to the source. So where did the traffic come from? This could easily be mediums. This was organic, this was paid, this was whatever. But it showed where the traffic came from, how many users and sessions, and by heat mapping this, it showed the context of the role of that particular source. So hypothetically, you could say, okay, Facebook in the reporting interface doesn't look like it does anything. It doesn't look like they converted on the main goal, which could be they bought the shoes, they signed up for the webinar, whatever. But if you've got more than one conversion, you could say, well, hang on a second. Facebook seems to be really good at getting them to give us their contact telephone number or watch a webinar or watch a video. It kind of eases the pressure on the role of that particular channel. So I really like doing this. Now, obviously, this still goes back to the rule book of Google Analytics, that this is 100% of the credit goes to the last non-direct channel, which again is fine. There's another report that we'll talk about at the end that's going to balance the scorecard. But hopefully here you can start to see that different sources are going to have different responses for you. So I really want to have more than one goal in my website to see if it's doing anything in terms of my content. Okay, so as I said, 100% of the credit goes to the last non-direct channel, and that is the same rule for all of your content pages. If you look at what's the value of that particular page, 100% of the credit goes to the page that gave you the sale. What about all the other pages that they visited before they got over the line? Oh, they look like they didn't do very well. So it's not enough that we just report on we made the sale and focusing on the star player that got the person over the line. You have other people in the marketing team, the different channels, and they have different roles to play in your marketing ecosystem. And we need to be a little bit better at assigning credit to how well that particular asset worked for us. So there's a report in Google Analytics right at the very bottom, the multi-channel funnel reports, or the MCF reports. Now, I really love an assisted conversion. I don't want to hate on any reports that show what the revenue is for particular marketing channels, but I want you all to start picking at the attribution model of that report. So if you do get a report that says, well, most revenue for this particular industry comes from paid media, and then somebody that's owning that budget might say, well, we'll get rid of all of our social media and we'll get rid of all of the, okay, like if you do that, there is nobody at the end. This was a team. They have different roles to play. They convert at different stages. They convert different micro conversions better than others. So if we think about a typical customer journey going through that pain aware, problem aware, solution aware, most aware, let's say hypothetically I'm on the train, and this happens a lot, and I'm bored, so I scroll through Instagram and I see a post for a cute bag, and I'm like, that's a nice bag. So I have a look at it, it's been tagged correctly, and I look at the website and I go, cute, but I'm at my stop now, so I'm going to get off the train. Now, the website's clever, and they dropped a little retargeting tag. So when I'm on my lunch and I log in, oh, there's that bag again. It's like waving at me going, please spend your money. And again, it's being tagged and bagged correctly. So I go and visit the website and I think, okay, I think I might buy the bag, but I've got quite a few bags, and maybe I shouldn't. And then those pop-ups appear that happen a lot with retailers. If you give us your email address, we will give you 10% off. I'm like, oh, that's quite tempting. So I sign up for the newsletter and I get my discount code. And then once I've gotten home and I've got my kids to sleep, I go, what was I? Oh, yes, I wanted to buy that bag. So I typed the URL in, like I know where, bagcompany.com. I pop in my little discount code and I buy it. Now, if I was to go into the acquisition reports for all channels and see, did somebody buy the product? What was my e-commerce conversion rate? 100% of the credit went to the last non-direct channel. So my email marketing, in this instance, gets 100% of the credit. Retargeting, 0. Instagram post, 0. And that's a mistake, because you can look at these reports and go, well, let's stop spending money on the Instagram posts and the retargeting. It doesn't bring us in any sales. And that is a mistake, because they assisted in a sale. If it wasn't for those particular channels, then I would never have gotten the bag in the first instance. So what I want you to start looking at is this conversion report, provided you have the goals set up in the first instance. You can go to multi-channel funnels, go to assisted conversions, and it's going to give you the value. So when you're reporting, you of course want to do acquisition, email brought in this much money, but then go to this report and add a note to say, but it also assisted in X number of sales at X value. Now, one thing that's really cute that you can do in this report, because we are talking about content marketing here over the sale, you can use this report for your landing pages. So when you scoochie over to the dimensions that are the little text in the blue lines, click on other, and then type into that box landing page URL. And what that's going to do is show you the landing pages that people are converting on and the assisted conversions for those pages, because the same rule applies. This is a computer program at the end of the day, remember, ladies and gentlemen. So if we're looking at the value of our content lives on a URL or is an asset of some sort, then you might have an awful lot of blog content that is really good at satisfying that pain and problem aware. But when it comes to, well, did it convert? It's going to come up as a 0 if that's not the page that they converted on. If that's not the shop page or the checkout page, it's going to look quite poor. So by doing this, we're using this assisted conversion report to see the value of sales for other pages in the customer journey, which is really bloody useful and insightful to understand what pages are actually doing quite a good job for us on the website. The sorry mistake we see sometimes is people deleting these pages and then going, where did the sales go? Where did the sales go? I'm like, you deleted the pages that got you the sales in the first place. So we don't want that. So this is what it looks like when you're inside. You get to look at all the pages, and it's marvelous. And you can drill down by all of the goals. So if you've got 20 conversions, you can see the assisted conversions rate for all of your goals, or you can drill down in particular. So here's one we made earlier. We've got things like, how are the pages working in terms of getting people to click on an email address, or download a resource, or watch a video, or do something with our content. We're able to play around with that data, and gives us a lot more insights. Now you can rinse and repeat this process with the top conversion paths report as well. So I like going into this, provided your your marketing channels have been tagged correctly, so that organic is organic and direct is direct and referral is referral, etc. You can do the same thing by going over to other and changing the dimension to landing page URL. So instead of showing the channels that people are finding you through their journey, you can start seeing the pages that people are looking at as a typical path to purchase. So when you're starting to look at things like segmentation, when you're looking at sequences, people that go on this page, on this page, on this page, on this page, you can guess, which is like going, this might work, or I'm biased on what I think might work. Or you can go into this report and actually have a look at what are the pages that people are looking at, and then use that as a basis to investigate further. Is it converting well? Is there a problem? Is there a usability issue that we need to focus on that could tweak a few things to get more people to do what we want them to do at the end? So if you still want to play around with this report, the multi-channel funnels report is delicious and wonderful, and I encourage you all to go and have a poke around. You can play around, for those of you that are feeling quite excitable at this kind of stuff, at attribution models. You can create your own, but they don't have to be attribution models for particular channels. You can do this for particular landing pages as well. So if there's interest in this, I'd love an excuse to write blog content on this, so let us know in your comments below. Right, so songs, umbrella, Ella, I knew I was going to sing that. We've thought about the customer journey, checkbox there. We've thought about the ecosystem to make sure that everything is where it should be. We have thought about our goals, that we should have more than one and have some macro and micro conversions, and the idea of heat mapping that so that you can check the role of your particular channels, the assisted conversions of the channels, the assisted conversions of that content and the URLs that they're looking at. Another thing that I want you to look at with Google Analytics is avoiding this feeling. I know we've all been there, because we speak to a lot of people. When you log into the reports and there's just a lot of pages, and some of you might have really big websites, and then your boss is going, so how many people are looking at the blog pages or the case study pages or the product pages? And you're like, oh, I'm not going to export this and try and do some fancy witchcraft in Excel. So you just kind of leave it. And we don't want that. So this is what we're trying to avoid: going into site content or pages and then thinking, wow, I've got 52,000 pages to decipher. Like, what content are they looking at in terms of stages of awareness, or the blog pages or the content pages or whatever? Nobody wants to go through this manually. So the way to get around this is to use something called content grouping. So it's like pulling together all of your different types of content under a particular umbrella. And this is an example from the Google demo account. You can have 5 content groupings per reporting view. They have 3 set up on the Google Analytics demo account. They have one for brands. So is it YouTube? Was it Android? That kind of thing. They have product categories. Is this apparel? Is this homeware? Is this plants or whatever. And then they've got clothing by gender. Is this the boys? Is this the girls? Is this the mums or the dads? That kind of thing. Now, when you have this set up on your account, instead of just looking at 52,500 pages, you can just select one of these content groupings and it's going to suck it all up into one nice, neat little umbrella and save you manually counting them. So for this example, we put the content grouping for product categories, and I can see that the apparel pages accounted for 14,000 page views and some change, or about 28% of the website page views. Now, because these are all under the same umbrella, if you click on apparel in this use case, it will then give you the report of all of the pages that match those particular rules. So I love a content grouping, but again, they're pretty absent in most of the audits that we do and the training that we do with people, and they don't take that long to set up. Now, there are 3 ways that you can do this. The first one is the quickest and simplest way is rule set. So this is you defining a set of rules which is based on your URL structure. If the page contains /shoes, it's a shoe page. If the page contains /Apple, it's an Apple page, that kind of thing. You then have content via extraction. So this is using regular expression or regex. So if you have an e-commerce site and you've got lots and lots and lots and lots of pages, you might not be able to get away with doing that if the page contains shoes, because you might have like 20,000 shoes. So you can use regular expression to make that a little bit easier on the computer program. Or you can use tracking code, which is somebody actually putting in code on your website to pull this in. I don't see many people use that. It's typically either the rule set or content via extraction. So the way that I like to approach this, because you can have 5 content groupings per reporting view, I would start with your website navigation. So if it's the first one that I'm going to get my hands on, always website navigation. This is the home page, this is the product page, these are the service pages, this is the blog page, this is the about us page, this is the contact page, etc., etc. And then if I'm selling stuff on the website or I have particular categories, then I will divide it by the products. And then I would look at it by brand if I have more than one brand. And then we also like to look at this as content by stages of awareness. So if it is, and this all depends on your URL structures and your information architecture, but if you have, for example, looking back at the keyword modifiers that we talked about at the beginning of this webinar, if the URL starts with who, what, where, when, why, well, that's all of our blog content because you've optimized it for that stage of awareness. If the URL contains our product names, then it's a product page. If it contains X, Y, you see where we're going with this. And then the last one is to have a look at content by type. So if I know, again, my certain URL structures, and I know certain URLs house types of content, then I can say this is our webinar page, this is a video page, etc., etc. Now, the way that I normally do this is I get a whiteboard or I get some sticky paper and pens, and I just work out what is the rule book. So this is what we did for the colouring in department. We said, right, we're going to have a page for about us, and we got our little post-it notes and said, what do we tell the computer program? What are the rules? So if the page exactly matches /contact and or the page starts with digital marketing trainers, then please bucket this as about us within our master group for website navigation. So we have one for our home page, the CID course pages, the about pages, our resources, like it's all categorized. So when I'm looking at our report in terms of how well is our website content working for us, I'm not manually counting, I'm just going drop down, please show me my website navigation, and boom, it's all there, and I am slightly happier. It only starts the day that you create them, which is why it's always nice to have this done as soon as you can, really. Do it in a test view first, because if you break anything, nobody's going to cry. And then when you're happy with it, you can copy it over into your main reporting view. Now, extra things that you can do with content grouping. So if you're thinking, this sounds great, Jill, but it might be a bit of work. And yeah, it's a couple of hours to kind of work out what the URLs are going to be and how it's going to work. But you can do more with it than just look at your all pages report. If you have content groupings, you can use them as secondary dimensions. And all that is adding another column in your reports. And this is an example from the Google demo account. So they had one about brands. So I could go into my all traffic channels report and then add a secondary dimension and say, right, from all the traffic that's coming in, group all the pages that relate to certain brands so I can see what brands are coming from my traffic. We've done this with our content, like, well, if the traffic's coming from a particular medium or source, what pages are they looking at? And if you group them under content groupings, it becomes a lot more insightful. And you can also use them to create segments. So imagine having the opportunity to say, if a user has visited our website and looked at the blog, like all the blogs that you have, then put them in a remarketing list to remarket them to the next stage of awareness. Or maybe you'll do it to say, show me people that looked at all of our case studies, all of our kind of solution product aware content, but they didn't convert. Follow them around the web with a specific message. Is a much smarter way to approach your content strategy. Now, as I mentioned, this only happens the day that you create them, but there is a workaround in the beautifulness that is Google Data Studio. Now, case statements are basically another set of rules, but they pretty much follow the rules of content grouping. So when the page contains this, then that kind of approach. Now, if you want to do something really super, we've got a link at the bottom here for SEER Interactive, a lovely lady called Kia. So hello, Kia. If you do use this, this lovely sheet that she's created, give her a wave, send her a tweet, say thanks, because she's about to save you a crap ton of time. So I want to get all of my content and I want to divide the different stages of awareness, but nobody's created it in my analytics account. And I want to apply it to historical data. You can with Data Studio and this sheet. This is a free Google sheet, so you just download it. And then on the left and the right-hand side of column A and B, you're just gonna say, if the page contains about, contact, or whatever, you put your URLs in because you know your URL structure. And then on column B, you're just going to type in, dear Google, when a page contains this, please mark it as homepage, blah, 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 blah. So that's going to take you on half an hour, 2 hours, something like that, to build out what your URL structure is. And you don't have to be scared about the regex because it populates this for you. Again, thank you very much, Kia. And what you're going to do is go into Google Data Studio, and bottom right-hand side, once you've connected Data Studio with your Google Analytics account, you're going to click Create New Field. It's a bit hard to see, so bottom right, here's where it lives. And all you're doing here is creating a new data set, which sounds more complicated than it is. I'm going to copy and paste the formula in column C, and in this formula, in this case statement, I'm going to put the name of the content grouping, so you put in like website navigation, and then I'm going to copy and paste what was in column C, and then I'm going to hit save. Now when you do that, you get reports like this, which is marvelous. So here's one I made earlier. This was an example of showing a company that had a lot of content. Where were people coming from, and where could we find opportunities to improve? But then you can sit in a room and brainstorm till the cows come home, or you can pull some data to base your hypotheses on. So we did it by stage of awareness because their URL structure was pretty sweet, where we could say if it was who, what, where, why, then it's all of our blog content because that's the pain aware. If it's solution where, then it's these URLs, and so on and so forth. Now what we could see here with the chart is the pain aware didn't get that much love really. They were driving a lot of traffic to the product by other means, but that area needed some work. So we were looking primarily at their assisted conversions report. We were looking at the customer journey, and a lot of the content at the beginning stage was from Google, because let's face it, Google is your little secret box. You can type anything into that search engine, all your secrets, all your fears, all your hopes and dreams, and it's never going to say that's a stupid question. It's going to go, here are the results and featured snippets and whatever. So for this particular client, we could very quickly identify that the beginning of the journey needed some work, which was primarily the blog content. And because we applied this case statement, whilst we were waiting for Dev to build our content groupings, we could kind of bypass it by going in Data Studio and looking at the historical data. Now, what we did with this methodology is apply it to their crawl data. So we got deep crawl. There are plenty of tools out there to crawl your website. A bit like the All Pages report, though, I find this myself. I will get a crawl report and I'm like, that is a lot of URLs with errors and issues. And where do you start? Do you just start at the top and work your way down? Or is there a better way for me to allocate my time? So what we do here is we applied the case statements to the crawl data, because it's the same thing. It's like URL equals this, that, and the other. And we found that at the pain aware stage, all that blog content, there were loads of issues. We found pages that had images that were too big because the team that were creating the blog content were just, they didn't understand SEO. So they were just loading up pretty pictures, not realizing that they had to make those images smaller because they were making the website slower. So it was a really good opportunity for us to check out how our content was working, but also apply it in a way that made it easy for people to see why we were doing things the way that we were doing them. So the stakeholders could look at this and go, I see what you're doing with your time, off you go, kind of thing. Now, you can use case statements for things like your URL structure. You can use it to categorize things. So you could say, if something was m.facebook, Facebook, FaceTV or whatever, please call it Facebook. Or if a page contains whatever, like go to town. Check out the blog post from Kia. She's got loads of use cases in there, and it's really amazing. Oh, okay, so we that's a lot of information, isn't it? A lot of useful information, hopefully. So where do we go from here? Obviously, I love talking, as you can tell, about analytics and measurement and marketing and shoes and leaky roofs. But in terms of where you go with this information, because this is going to be recorded, you can watch this again. I would like you all to start looking at your content across the customer journey, because there are certain assets that are going to perform slightly differently because of their role in the customer journey. So the blog pages won't look like they convert, because for most people, that is just the information. I'm just trying to find some guidance, and then I'm moving further into the website, absorbing different types of content as I move towards that goal when I'm ready. I think there are many examples where your content assets are actually goals. So if somebody downloads a PDF, that is a micro conversion. If somebody plays a video, that is a conversion. If somebody submits their email address to get your white paper, that is a conversion. So have more than one goal in Google Analytics. Have 20, have the maximum amount that you can have. And then you can start looking at your data and do that cool thing like with a heat map and start to understand everybody that came to the website, what are the conversion rates as you work through that marketing flywheel? And then you can start to highlight if you've got any areas where there may be some issues. We had a client that we worked with where people downloading the free content, like the PDFs, was converting at like 9%. I was like, man, that is great. The goal after that, though, was something like 0.4. And I'm like, okay, there's a disconnect here. Something's gone wrong between this stage of the journey and the next one. Focus on this stage. Focus on the content here. And then we'll get more bang for our buck at the end without doing anything else to our marketing strategy, just understanding that is going to be really critical. I want you to think about content groupings in Google Analytics. They are lovely and I want to see more of them. So email me your stories if you're using them. You can apply them to Google Data Studio, and there's that free tool, that free Google Sheet for you to just copy and paste it. The work is going to come from you just identifying what do you want in your particular buckets, and I would start with your website navigation and then work through whatever the goals are and the business model is for your website. Start from there. I want you to start thinking about the role that your content actually has in assisting conversion. So that multi-channel funnels report is amazing at showing the assisted conversions for your sources. Where does the link live? The mediums, your big broad buckets. But how do those landing pages, how do those URLs that house all of that gorgeous content, how does that work in assisting conversions? I can guarantee you, for those of you that are focusing on that early stages of awareness content, that the value that has for the business is much higher than you think it is, because that report is going to tell you that story. Have a look at attribution models, but we'll put a pin in that because that's quite a detailed topic for later. And definitely play around with the Google Analytics demo account. If you don't know, the Google Analytics have a website called Merchandise Store where you can buy more stuff from Google, and in Data Studio you can access analytics data from that, YouTube data, that kind of thing. So you can play around with building your reports to make them look pretty, and practice makes perfect. Like, the one key message we have with anything that we do at the Colouring In department, we are not masters of this overnight. Like, this comes from practice. This comes from making mistakes. This comes from pulling our hair out and going down rabbit holes. There is only one way to really get better at this, and that's just having a go and just practicing and making things a little bit easier. And that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna hand over to the lovely Aidan to see if he's answered questions or if there's anything going on. So I'm going to mute myself, and hopefully I can unmute myself again, because
I mean, maybe you can mute yourself. We've heard quite a lot from you though, Jill, let's be totally honest. Quite a lot going on in the group chat, lots of questions, lots of, frankly, feedback around future webinars. We've had quite a lot of chat around UTM and the campaigns report, so that's sort of, don't say we don't pay attention to you, because we do. It's probably a future webinar though at this particular stage. Now I know obviously all of you will thank me in thanking Jill for her time in her super dense webinar, as is ever the case. We have about 3 minutes left, so if you do have any questions, and I haven't picked them up, I picked up most of them in the background anyway, do feel free, and I will make Jill answer them at gunpoint, so to speak, fake gunpoint nonetheless. But if you do have any questions, of course, Jill and I will hang around on the line for a few minutes. We will post the recording ASAP to both YouTube. You will get a follow-up email with the recording, as well as a couple of additional prompts. As Jill said, there are tons of resources on the website. They're free, they're yours, you have them, you follow this 8-step process, and you will nail it in time. And that is all, really. Cool, have a good one. Seems like we have no additional questions that are all managed to be answered. You're very welcome, everyone. A huge thank you for coming to our webinar once again. Have a great day wherever you're at in the world, or indeed whatever is left of your day, depending on where you are located. Have a good one. Take care.